In the heart of New York City, amid the glittering towers of steel and glass, lived Ethan Blackwood, a young man surrounded by the wealthiest circles, yet utterly alone. Ethan was the only son of billionaire businessman Robert Blackwood, a self-made mogul whose empire spanned across tech, real estate, and global investments. From the outside, their mansion in the Upper East Side looked like a palace, and Ethan was supposed to be living the dream. But Ethan had one difference that set him apart from others in the family. He was deaf. His world was one of silence, where every conversation around him felt like a distant hum. As a child, Ethan's parents, overwhelmed by their own busy lives, put him through various therapies. But the isolation he felt only deepened as he grew older. At family gatherings, Ethan often found himself standing at the edge, watching his parents engage in conversations that he couldn't fully participate in. Even though they provided him with the best tutors, the best equipment, the finest everything, they never quite understood the emotional distance that created. He had everything anyone could ever dream of: luxury, wealth, and status. But no one had ever really spoken to him. Not like a person, not like a friend. Maya Patel was not born into luxury. In fact, she lived on the other side of the city, on the gritty, bustling streets of Brooklyn. She came from a working-class family where every penny counted and dreams were a luxury. Her father, a cab driver, worked long hours just to pay the bills. Maya herself worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a local cafe and another tutoring children, just to save for her dream of going to college one day. Her life was far from perfect, but Maya had something money could never buy: empathy. She was the type of person who could see beyond the surface, who noticed the small things. And that's how she first noticed Ethan Blackwood. It was during a charity gala at the Blackwood estate, an event where the city's elite gathered to raise funds for various causes. Maya had been invited by one of her wealthy friends, a girl who worked as an assistant at a public relations firm. Maya felt completely out of place, but her friend insisted that she come along. And there, in a corner of the ballroom, Maya spotted him. Ethan Blackwood, standing alone by the window, his gaze lost in the skyline. He was handsome, no doubt, but what caught Maya's attention wasn't his looks. It was the way he stood apart from the crowd. He was always at the edges, like a ghost. Most people would have just ignored him, but not Maya. Something about him struck a chord deep within her. Maya's chance came when she found herself near Ethan during the event's cocktail hour. Everyone around them was engaged in small talk, but Ethan seemed oblivious, his eyes staring blankly at the crowd. She didn't know what possessed her, but she approached him. "Hey," she signed, smiling, even though she wasn't sure if he could read her lips. Ethan blinked, surprised, and for a moment, she thought he might walk away. But instead, his face softened and he slowly nodded. Ethan had always struggled to communicate with others in these social settings. People would either speak over him or completely avoid trying to communicate. But here was this girl, this stranger, making the effort. "I know it's hard to talk in places like this," Maya continued, "but you don't have to be alone." Ethan's eyes flickered with surprise. He had never met someone who had made such an effort. It wasn't that he didn't want to engage with others, it was just that nobody ever made the effort to truly understand him. Maya could tell there was more to him than what met the eye. She could see the loneliness behind his silent facade. So they began to talk, not with words, but with understanding. The following weeks were strange for both Maya and Ethan. Maya had never been invited into the world of the Blackwoods. It was a place she couldn't even dream of, yet she found herself there more often than not. They had an unspoken bond, a friendship that no one could understand. Maya wasn't interested in his wealth, nor was she intimidated by his family's status. For the first time, Ethan felt like someone saw him as more than just the son of a billionaire. They would meet in secret, away from the eyes of the press, away from the people who only saw Ethan as an heir or a symbol of wealth. Their conversations were raw, real, and without pretense. Maya's presence allowed Ethan to break free from his shell, to let out the emotions he had buried deep inside. She taught him to use more advanced sign language, and in turn, he taught her some things about his world, his silence, his isolation. It was a slow, transformative process, but both of them were changing in ways they hadn't expected. It was at another grand event that everything changed. The Blackwoods were hosting a charity auction for a children's hospital. As usual, the place was filled with high-profile guests, business leaders, and media. Ethan was expected to give a speech, as was tradition for the host's son. But this time was different. Ethan had been preparing something he had never shared before. Maya stood by his side, her heart racing. This was his moment to break free from the chains that had held him for so long. With Maya's encouragement, Ethan took a deep breath and began to speak, not aloud, but through sign language. His hands broke the silence for the first time in public. The audience watched in stunned silence, unsure how to react. Maya stood in front of him, translating every word. "I'm not my father. I'm not the Blackwood Empire. I'm Ethan," he signed, his eyes locked on hers. And just like that, everything changed. Ethan's speech wasn't loud, but it echoed through the grand hall of the Blackwood estate. His hands told his truth in front of hundreds. A deaf billionaire's son breaking years of silence with the help of a girl no one expected. The crowd was still, stunned. Some applauded slowly, others whispered. The media flashed their lights. But Ethan only looked at Maya. For a boy who had never been truly heard, it felt like the world had finally stopped to listen. That night, the video of Ethan's speech went viral. Social media exploded. Some called it inspiring. Others accused the family of staging a PR stunt. Ethan wasn't surprised, but Maya was overwhelmed. Her inbox flooded with messages, some kind, others cruel. At the mansion, Robert Blackwood watched the video alone. The proud businessman had always protected his empire, but never knew how to protect his son. Watching Ethan sign in front of the world shifted something inside him. For the first time, he didn't see Ethan as the quiet heir, but as a man with his own voice, even if it wasn't spoken. Later that night, Ethan texted Maya, "They're all watching now." "It's terrifying," she replied. "Let them watch. Just don't stop being you." It was the beginning of a storm, and perhaps the start of real change. With attention came pressure. Old friends reached out, some only for clout. Media twisted their relationship. Headlines like "Deaf Billionaire's Son" and "The Waitress Turned Muse" filled gossip columns. Robert's corporate partners expressed concern. Shareholders questioned whether Ethan's public image was helping or hurting the brand. Some deals paused. "This is getting messy," an advisor warned. Meanwhile, Maya's life was shifting. Her father's cab broke down again, and her younger sister's school fees were overdue. Maya worked double shifts, hiding her struggles from Ethan. She didn't want to be a burden. But Ethan noticed the distance. One night, watching a sunset over Central Park, Ethan turned to her. "Maybe we should take a break. I don't want the world to hurt you because of me." Maya's heart cracked, but she smiled through it. "You taught me silence doesn't mean absence. I'm not going anywhere." She knew they were walking through fire, and not everyone survived the burn. Ethan turned his pain into art. He held his first public exhibition. With Maya's help, he painted pieces about loneliness, fear, and hope. The collection was titled Silence Speaks. The opening night was surreal. New York's art elite showed up. Critics, photographers, even celebrities. Maya stood beside Ethan, proud but nervous. This was his soul on the wall. Some critics praised the raw emotion. Others called it dark or melodramatic. One said, "He's clearly struggling, but is it art?" Maya wanted to scream. But Ethan stayed calm. Until a photographer caught a picture of Maya gently holding Ethan's hand. The next morning, a tabloid splashed the headline, "Gold Digger or Guardian Angel." The girl behind Ethan Blackwood. It hurt not because it was new, but because it was loud. Ethan retreated. He didn't paint for weeks. Maya kept showing up, bringing coffee, jokes, small gifts. But Ethan barely smiled. Then one day a letter arrived. A 10-year-old deaf boy from Queens wrote, "I saw your video. Now I tell people I'm like Ethan Blackwood. I'm not broken, I'm different. Thank you." Ethan cried for the first time in years. He signed to Maya, "I'm not hiding anymore." That letter became the beginning of something greater. Together, Ethan and Maya founded the Blackwood Foundation for Inclusion, a nonprofit focused on supporting children with disabilities through education, technology, and art therapy. The media shifted. Headlines changed from gossip to admiration. Maya began receiving speaking invitations. Ethan's paintings sold to collectors not as pity purchases but as respected pieces. The foundation held workshops at local schools. At one, a little boy painted a black flower with a yellow stem. He was nonverbal. Ethan signed to him gently, "Darkness is okay. It's where stars are born." Maya watched as the boy smiled and nodded. She knew they were making real change, not just in boardrooms or art galleries, but in hearts. At home, Maya's family stabilized. Her father got a loan to buy a newer cab. Her sister earned a small scholarship. Maya finally allowed herself to rest, to exhale. Ethan began sketching again. Their bond, once fragile, now felt unbreakable. The Blackwood Foundation launched in a modest, sunlit building in Brooklyn, the neighborhood Maya grew up in. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. From a billionaire mansion to the streets of Brooklyn, Ethan had found his voice. At the opening ceremony, Ethan gave a speech in sign language, this time with full confidence, standing next to Maya. Silence is not absence. It's space to listen, to feel, to grow, Maya translated. But most people had already learned enough ASL to understand him. That was the true victory. Robert Blackwood stepped up next, holding back tears. "I built empires," he said, "but my son built something more meaningful. He built bridges." The applause was thunderous. Later that night, under the New York sky, Ethan and Maya sat on the rooftop of their small shared apartment in Brooklyn. Lights flickered below. The city pulsed around them. Ethan turned to Maya and signed, "I used to think love was something I could never fully experience. But now I know it's a language of its own." Maya smiled, "And we speak it fluently." They leaned into each other, quiet and content. No noise, no spotlight. Just two souls who met in silence and built a symphony together. A story that began in isolation now echoes in the hearts of thousands. It had been 1 year since Ethan Blackwood stepped onto that stage and signed his truth into the world. 12 months since Maya Patel crossed a ballroom floor and spoke, not with perfect sign language, not with pity, but with something no one else ever offered him: respect. The Blackwood Foundation had grown faster than anyone predicted. Centers were opening across the country, offering art therapy, sign language programs, and mental health support for deaf and hard-of-hearing children. Schools that had once ignored inclusion were now requesting workshops and funding. And through it all, Ethan and Maya remained side by side, partners not just in purpose but in something deeper. One cold November morning, Ethan stood alone in front of his mother's old piano, now restored and placed in the corner of their shared apartment. His mother had passed when he was 9. She was the only one who tried to learn his language when he was a child. Before her, silence had never felt lonely. After her, it did. They didn't need many words. Their world was full of small gestures, meaningful silences, and emotions that didn't need translation. Later that week, the foundation was invited to present at the United Nations Youth Forum in Washington, D.C. Ethan was to be honored for his work in disability advocacy. Maya would speak on inclusive education. As they stood backstage, Ethan pulled out a small folded note from his pocket. He handed it to her. She unfolded it. "In a world full of noise, you heard me. In a world full of eyes, you saw me. In a world where I was invisible, you believed in me." At the bottom of the note was a small line in ASL. "Will you marry me?" Maya looked up, stunned. Years passed. Their story inspired a generation, not just because Ethan was deaf or because Maya was poor, but because they proved that understanding can break barriers louder than any speech. They wrote a book together, The Language We Found. It became a bestseller, translated into multiple languages, including Braille and ASL editions. Maya went on to lead national education policy reforms. Ethan became a mentor to thousands of deaf artists around the country. And every now and then, they would return to that park under the same blooming tree, sit quietly and watch the petals fall. They didn't speak, they didn't need to, because some love stories don't need sound. They just need to be seen. The end.